What happens when another driver crashes into you and they can't pay for the losses?
It's too late now. I mean, almost nobody has enough insurance to cover you if you get in a crash like this. And if you don't take care of yourself, nobody else is gonna.
1 in 10 drivers in Iowa have no insurance. That means if they hit you, you're screwed unless you followed this video's instructions. Pete, when we're talking about drivers that hit you, they don't have insurance. I mean, what happens when another driver crashes into you and they can't pay for the losses?
If the other driver has no insurance, in reality, you're not going to be able to recover anything. I mean, drivers who have no insurance, in my experience, never have any assets that you can satisfy a judgment out of. You're not going to recover.
So you can sue them, but ultimately you're not going to be able to grab anything because they have nothing.
That's exactly right. I mean, I've had lots and lots of cases over the years where you sue somebody, you find out they don't have insurance, you find out they don't have assets. You can continue with the lawsuit and you might get a huge judgment, but it's only going to be satisfying to the extent that it makes you happy to see a piece of paper with a big number on it, because that person's going to file bankruptcy and you're never going to collect a dime.
So we talked about assets. I mean, a house is an asset, a car is an asset, but we can't attack those with a lawsuit necessarily. Is that correct?
That's true. I mean, I'm no bankruptcy lawyer, but I know just enough to be dangerous. You just cited a couple of prime examples. They're going to have maybe a house, maybe a car. You can't take those. You can't take the retirement accounts. There's a list of assets that you can't touch, which means that almost everybody who lacks significant assets is going to be able to totally get rid of any judgment you get in a lawsuit for injuries that you have in a motorcycle crash.
I have insurance, right? I've got liability coverage. Why doesn't that apply?
Liability coverage does apply if you're at fault and you hurt somebody. But if you're the one that gets messed up, which is almost always the case in a motorcycle versus automobile collision, that liability insurance doesn't cover you at all. It just covers your liability to the other guy, but that's not what we're worried about when you get hit on your motorcycle.
We've heard plenty of people come in and they talk about, well, I have full coverage, so I must be okay. Why is that kind of a misnomer? Why does that not work that way?
That's a huge misnomer, and I hear it all the time. People come in and we're of course interested in what they got for insurance, and people say,
I have full coverage.
And they look at what you call the declaration page that lists the different coverages, and in fact, there is a number on every line on that declaration page that shows their coverages, but so often, almost always, the coverages aren't nearly enough. You might feel secure that you got full coverage, but then you look at the policy and it's only $20,000 for uninsured and underinsured motorists. And in a motorcycle crash, almost any motorcycle crash, that's not anywhere close to enough to take care of the kinds of losses that people have when they're in a significant motorcycle crash. I could give you literally story after story after story of this situation. It happens multiple times every year. But here's one example. We represented a guy who was in a serious motorcycle crash. I mean, he got all busted up. The dude is in the hospital literally for months. I mean, his hospital bills alone were over $200,000. And again, this guy's in the hospital for months. He's not working. Right. He's also having a huge loss of income. So if there's not enough insurance, this guy is going to be totally screwed financially. And the real life situation was the other driver had a $100,000 policy. Sounds like a lot of money until you start talking about $200,000 in medical bills and months without income. So the $100,000 clearly was nowhere close to enough. We got a financial statement from the guy. Yeah, he had a few assets, the types of things that can be protected in bankruptcy. He had nothing we could collect against above and beyond his insurance policy. So now we're looking to our client's insurance policy. Hopefully they've got a strong underinsured motorist policy. Well, okay, this guy had a $50,000 policy. So we've got a total of $150,000 that we can recover against, when the guy's recovery really based on over $200,000 in medical bills and a huge pile of lost income. I mean, he still wasn't back to work by the time the case was over. That's probably $1 million recovery to put this guy back on his feet properly. And the most we could do is $150,000, and it's super frustrating. And it's hard to explain. I mean, it's easy to explain, but it's hard to explain in a way that people will ever really understand, because it's too late now. I mean, you hate to say to somebody, damn it, you should have gotten big limits on your uninsured, underinsured, because almost nobody has enough insurance to cover you if you get in a crash like this. And if you don't take care of yourself, nobody else is gonna.
So specifically the type of coverage we need is called underinsured or uninsured motorist coverage. And how much of that do we need to be having if we're riding motorcycles?
My suggestion is buy as much as you can absolutely afford, but I would never advocate riding a motorcycle with anything less than $250,000 of uninsured, underinsured coverage.
Now, is this very expensive to add on to an existing policy with liability coverage, or is it pretty reasonable to grab?
No, it's really not expensive. It's some of the least expensive insurance you can buy. You're going to pay less for protecting yourself with this kind of coverage than you pay to protect the other guy with your liability coverage.
Let's say we go through this and we have, underinsured, uninsured motorist coverage. We did all the proper steps. You get in a crash. It's not your fault. Should you be trusting the insurance company to pay that portion out correctly?
Did you say trust the insurance company?
Fair. Self-explanatory, I suppose.
Your own insurance company, when you're dealing with an uninsured, underinsured claim, they've at least got some incentive to be decent to you, but it's not a very strong incentive. Once you're proceeding against your own insurance company for uninsured or underinsured, their main incentive is to pay you as little as possible, just like any case, and they're going to do the normal things that insurance companies do to try to beat you down.
Gotcha. Let's say, this crash happens. At what point do you want to get that call from somebody saying, hey, we need help dealing with the insurance company?
As soon as possible. Seriously, as soon as possible. The sooner the better. I get plenty of calls from people that are still laying in a hospital bed.
And we've gone to those hospitals and talked to them in person and made sure that they're okay and we can help them.
Yeah, and seriously, within days after a wreck, if you're physically able to do it, you should be talking to a lawyer. You really should.
And there is umbrellas you can get, even if your insurance company is only willing to go up to, let's say, $250,000 or even $500,000. If you feel like you need more underinsured, uninsured motorist coverage, you're able to get more with an umbrella policy, yes?
Absolutely you can. And for those who don't know, an umbrella policy is kind of what it sounds like. Think about your main insurance policy, and then there's this big umbrella over the top of it. If you get in a crash, whether it's you being at fault and needing to pay huge damages to someone else, or more realistically, if you're a biker being in a crash, and like the example that I gave you about the guy that had probably $1 million claim, if he would have had $1 million umbrella that covered uninsured, underinsured, that guy would have been protected. And believe me, the umbrella, I talked about uninsured, underinsured coverage being relatively inexpensive. The umbrella is even less expensive. And in my opinion, that is the only way to adequately protect yourself when you're a biker, is to have a big policy with uninsured, underinsured limits and an umbrella over the top of it.
So give your insurance agent a quick call and make sure that you've got at least $250,000 in underinsured and uninsured motorist coverage. Then save our number in case you get in a crash. Now, click over here to learn one simple thing that you can do to prevent those crashes.